So before we start talking about why English is a hard language, we need to talk about why some people may think it's not. First of all, I think it's a question of familiarity. English has become so prominent in the world that it gives us the illusion that it's easy to learn. As of 2024, about 52% of the entire internet is in English, so there is a certain exposure that English enjoys on a global scale that might not be as prevalent as in other languages. But how did English acquire such a global prominence in the first place? Well, like for most questions we have about the state of today's world, the answer is colonialism. During the 17th and 18th centuries, the British colonies expanded across the Americas, Africa, Asia, and the Pacific. And after World War II, the US emerged as a global superpower in politics, economics, and culture. So English continued to spread as a common language for global communication. We are also starting to see the growth of multinational corporations in the US and the UK that conduct business in English. In the mid-20th century, we started to see significant tech innovation and the development of the internet. Many of the programming languages were developed in English. Programming languages like C, Python, Java, JavaScript, HTML, SQL, CSS, etc. There are programming languages that are based on other languages as well. Jim is in Arabic, LSE in French, Doolittle in Japanese, Chinese Basic, well, in Chinese. One thing to notice though is that these other programming languages that don't use English are pretty much French programming languages. The core programming languages are written in English. So if you want to be a programmer, you need to learn English. All these things contribute to English kind of being in your face, no matter where you look. As a result, you get the impression that it's an easy language to learn. One thing to remember is that English has 44 sounds. In comparison, Spanish has 24 to 25 sounds, depending on the dialect. You may think this is not a big deal, but these 44 sounds give us the possibility of forming 10,000 to 15,000 syllables. To put that in perspective, in Spanish, we only have the possibility of forming only close to 3,000 syllables. English kind of has a type of deceptive simplicity, meaning the basics of the language look very easy, but gets harder the more you learn it. Conjugation for the most part is not a big deal. If we had to conjugate the verb want in English in the present tense, it'd go like this. I want, you want, he wants, she wants, it wants, we want, they want. As you can see, the only variation we find here is in the third person singular with the addition of the letter S. There are no gendered nouns in English. We have 2 genders in French and Spanish. There are 3 in German, but there aren't any in English. For instance, the translation for the car is feminine in French, masculine in Spanish, and neutral in German. There is no complex case system in English like we have in languages like German or Russian. If you want to say the dog bites the man, in German, that'd be der Hund beißt den Mann. And if you wanna say the man bites the dog, it'd be der Mann beißt den Hund. Notice how the articles indicate which one is the subject and which one is the object there. There are no tones in English, meaning the words don't change meaning based on the pitch of your voice. You may use a certain tone to indicate how serious you are about something or your intentions, but the words themselves still hold the same meaning. This is different for a language like Chinese, which has 4 tones. For instance, ma can mean mother, hemp, house, or scold, depending on the tone used. English also has a simple SVO word order, which is fairly intuitive. But why is English so hard to learn regardless of these easy rules? Well, there's a bunch of complicated rules in English as well. For instance, we saw that the verbs are simple, but a lot of these verbs can also be phrasal verbs. By that I mean, they can combine with prepositions or adverbs that change their meaning entirely. For instance, the verb to give means passing something to someone. Pretty simple, right? But now, give up means stop trying, give in means to surrender, give away means to give something for free, to give it up for someone is to applaud them. So the verbs that at first look simple are now very context dependent because of these phrasal verbs. Not only that, you'll need to distinguish between the ones that are transitive and the ones that are intransitive. Some of them are separable, so I can say I turned off the light. I can also say I turned the light off, or I turned it off, but I can't say I turned off it. Some phrasal verbs are inseparable. I can say he got over his illness, and I can say he got over it, but I can't say he got his illness over. You may also notice that some of them are literal, so it's obvious from the meaning of each individual word, but other phrasal verbs are idiomatic, like these ones. You can see the meaning is not directly related to give or up. Breakdown means to stop functioning. The meaning is not literally related to break and down. So you need to be able to differentiate them. There are phrasal verbs like put up with, look forward to, and get away with that have multiple particles. These are verbs followed by two prepositions. There are also reflexive phrasal verbs like take care of oneself and pride oneself on. And these are phrasal verbs that people use on a regular basis in normal conversations. Another deceptive feature of English is the past tense. At first, you just add ed. Walk becomes walked, play, played, talk, talked. But then there's a bunch of irregular verbs. Go becomes went, run, ran, speak, spoke. And there are no simple rules. You just have to memorize this stuff. Even something like the articles that we use, a, an, and the. We say, for instance, a cat, an office, the president. But then there are times when you just don't use an article at all, like in general statements such as I love music, cats are expensive, water is essential. You also don't use articles in names of languages and nationalities, names of sports, names of academic subjects, names of meals, abstract nouns, names of cities, countries and continents, names of days, months and holidays, names of streets, parks and squares, names of institutions and companies, nouns used in pairs, some headlines and titles, etc. You may think this is not a big deal, but when you come from a language like French or Spanish, where articles are always used, it's gonna pose a problem. The modal verbs are another area of difficulty as well. You need to know what to use to ask for permission, what's for obligation, advice, ability, possibility. You also need to study the order of adjectives in English as well, because I can say a small blue car, but a blue small car, that's a no-no. The order of adjectives goes like this in English: number, quantity, opinion, quality, size, age, shape, color, origin, material, and purpose. So there's only one way to say the sentence, 3 beautiful small old round red French wooden dining tables. Pro tip: you can remember the order using the imperfect acronym NOSASCOMP. Then we have the main problem: pronunciation and spelling irregularities, like the TH sound that has a different pronunciation in each of these words. We also have silent letters, like the K in knife or the B in debt. You need to pay attention to the differences between countable and uncountable nouns and how that affects different plural forms, use of determiners, expressions of quantity, subject-verb agreement, use with some and many, compound nouns, partitive structures, etc. And you also need to learn how some words can be both countable and non-countable at the same time. Another thing that's confusing is that there are plenty of homophones and homographs in English as well. Native speakers often shorten the words as well through contractions, blending, initialisms, acronyms, and formal abbreviations, ellipses, reductions, slang shortenings, and numeric substitution, which is more common in texting. And finally, we have the rules of pluralization. The plural forms are pretty simple in the beginning. You just add an S in the end. Cat, cats, book, books, car, cars. But if the noun has one of these endings, you need to add ES, like in buses, boxes, and dashes. When the noun ends in a consonant plus Y, it changes into YES in plural, like in babies, cities, parties. But when it ends with a vowel plus Y, you just add S. Some nouns ending in F or FE change into VES, like in leaves and wolves. For others, you just add S. Some plural forms are completely irregular. Some words don't change at all and have the same form in both singular and plural. Nouns borrowed from Latin have special plural forms. It's the same for Greek. We add ES in some nouns ending in O, and for others, we just add S. For compound nouns, the main noun typically takes the plural form. So no, English is just not an easy language to learn.